Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie Helm, and I'm the director of the MassCyberCenter, and we're part of the Mass Tech Collaborative, and I'm speaking to you today from our offices in Boston. So it's nice to be back in the city and seeing people out and about. We're right across the street from City Hall, so everything is coming back to life. We are speaking to you today on a Zoom call because this is going to allow us to include people from across the state in a very important discussion about STEM and cybersecurity. And before I introduce the panel, I just want to give you a few words about the Mass Cyber Center. As you may know, we are a quasi-public agency where we conduct outreach across the state on a variety of cybersecurity issues relating to resiliency, cybersecurity awareness, and very importantly, workforce development. And that's part of what we're talking to you about today. Cybersecurity is a very important industry to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And it is also, cybersecurity is very important to other sectors of our economy as well as our citizens. So we are always on the hunt for new talent that can join the cybersecurity workforce and become part of this vibrant industry. So the Mass Cyber Center has a couple of initiatives. One is a very important training and education working group. We meet monthly with faculty members across the state who are teaching folks on how to join the cybersecurity profession or how to upskill themselves so that they can be even better employed. And this working group has been very helpful to us in giving us suggestions on how we can improve the talent development in the state of Massachusetts. From them, we got a recommendation to initiate a jobs board. So if you go to the Mass Cyber Center jobs website, you can see under the workforce development tools, we have a Massachusetts cybersecurity jobs board. So if you're interested in applying for a job, you can see what's open and available in the state of Massachusetts. And then recently we created a mentorship program where we select diverse candidates that are in the cybersecurity programs across the state, and we match them with a professional who's in the cybersecurity industry who can impart their knowledge and their wisdom to these students while they're in this program. So we match them up for about a 3-month period. They exchange information. It's a win-win because the mentors really like it and the students learn a lot. So if you're interested in being a student, if you're a college student studying cybersecurity, or if you're interested as a professional of becoming a mentor, you can access information on our website and you can fill out an information form. And as we do the recruiting, you'll get a notification from the Mass Cyber Center that we are opening up for recruitment for this semester. But today we're talking a little bit about STEM and the importance of STEM to our talent development in the state of Massachusetts and how Massachusetts really does require the employees to join in the cybersecurity workforce. So the STEM Summit will be held tomorrow. That will be on Thursday, on the 28th of April. And this panel will be broadcast to the STEM Summit as well. So you'll be able to share this information from this panel with others if you'd like to, but you can also participate in the STEM Summit. So in the chat right now, there are links on how to get to the Mass Cyber Center website and how to get to the STEM Summit. So lots going on, and to highlight all of that and to discuss this in our panel, I'm very pleased to introduce the panel moderator today. Alan Rattacco has been a friend of the Mass Cyber Center since before we were even born. And he's been very active in the training and education working group that I mentioned earlier. Alan is right now the Vice President of External Affairs at Clark University and has taken his time to recruit these fantastic panelists to talk about the intersection of cybersecurity and STEM. So thank you all to the panelists, but over to you, Alan, and thank you for your participation today.
Thank you, Stephanie, and a great introduction. So we want to keep the party going here. Make sure that everyone does take a look at that form. And if you are interested in becoming a mentor, please do connect with either Stephanie and or Max, who are on the call right now. You can easily reach out to them or any one of us on the Zoom call now. But now I want to turn to and introduce each of our panelists here. We've got some real top-end panelists across the state, some friends and some new friends, and some individuals here who are experts in the space that connects to STEM, or I like to add the A into that, STEAM, add the arts into it. But I first like to introduce just a top-level introduction, and then we'll have each of the panelists give a short intro of what their career path is, where they are today, how they got there, what they see the future like. Starting with Patria, who's the CIO over at Worcester Polytech. Pio Nathan, who is the CEO of Computer Vault here in Worcester. Ladrina Sherna, who is at Cybereason and an expert in all things cyber. Very excited to have met Ladrina recently. And then Saman, who's at the CIO over at Unibank. So if we can have each of you go through an introduction, and starting in no particular order, Ladrina, why don't we start with you, because you're the first on my screen.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alan, for the introduction. So my name is Ladrina Cherney. I'm a principal in the security department over at Cybereason, which means I get to inject security value both in things that Cybereason is doing to protect our customers that we serve, but also within the company itself. How do we keep our company itself secure? But on top of that, I wear a few other hats as well. I'm here because I am a MassCyberCenter mentor, and this is the second time I've been through that program. And I'm also an educator. I'm somebody who teaches adults who are really looking for the latest digital forensics training and information through the SANS Institute. So as somebody who's both personally involved in security functions, somebody who's a mentor, and somebody who's an educator, as well as somebody who, you know, when I was going to college and looking to get into the field, didn't know that I could be a digital forensic investigator or computer crime investigator. I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit more of my career path and what I was looking into in college, and how I got where I am now with the rest of this group. And thank you so much.
Excellent, thank you, Ladrina. Why don't we go next with Peo? Peo, you are on mute.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Alan, and thanks, MassTech, for organizing this panel and inviting me to be a panelist. Good afternoon to all the audience, and I'm the founder and CEO of Computer Vault. I'm actually a master's in chemical engineering coming out of UMass Lowell. You know, economic reasons, I switched to computers 25 years ago, and here I am running a cybersecurity company pretty much. It's an infrastructure software company. Anyway, Computer Vault is a hyper-converged infrastructure software that delivers virtual desktops and servers, and also the Internet of Things with built-in cybersecurity. Computer Vault is deployed as an infrastructure stack at the customer site. It's like almost bringing cloud to the customer site. We deploy and manage the entire infrastructure remotely. I mean, after I graduated from my college, and I worked for a chemical engineering company, not been too happy, so I decided that, okay, I'm going to switch field. I'm going to become a software engineer. Over the course of time, I worked for one of the first digital security companies. It used to be called as At Stake. Some of you might know it. It's out from Cambridge. In the early 1990s, when Y2K was booming up and nobody knows about cybersecurity, that company came around and changed the landscape on cybersecurity. I used to work with them for a few years. I picked up a lot of things. I got to tell you, the product that we have deployed and developed and deployed as a root coming from that digital security company. That gave me all that experience to be able to do what I'm doing today. So I got to tell you, everybody, that, you know, don't be shy in getting into a new area, a new field, or, you know, coming out of an arts background. Doesn't matter. If you want to do something, you can do it.
Great, thank you. Why don't we go next to Patria?
Thanks, Ellen. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Patria. I'm the Vice President for Information Technology and CIO at WPI. And similar to everyone else, I came into the security world via a very indirect path. I almost hate to admit this, but after leaving college, I initially wanted to become a lawyer, worked in law firms for a year and ditched that idea very quickly. Then went into the software world as a customer relationship management consultant, moved on to IT project management, became the director of a PMO. And then about 15 or so years ago, when we had the massive target breach in Massachusetts implemented our very stringent and good data breach requirements, I jumped into the security world as a CISO for several years. And that was a great platform to my current position, which is a CIO role. And to this day, I'm extremely involved in security discussions at WPI. I think it's critical, very involved, love to mentor other people interested in getting into the security world as well.
Great. Thank you, Patty. And last but not least, Saman.
Sure. Thank you, Alan and Cyber Center for having us. I'm Saman Amigi. I'm the CIO of Unibank. I started this job about 14 months ago. Previous to that, I had about 10 years of cybersecurity experience. My career, similar to others, I started as an electrical engineer. I was very close to computers my whole life. I worked through the process of software development, hardware development. As I learned each part, I moved on to the next part. I was being rotated at work for different things. And once the internet sort of developed and we started moving financial infrastructure, I've always been in finance, fintech. So as all of this moved over, it became clear that cyber was going to be a serious threat. I started as the development person, then I moved to IT manager, to security manager, to security officer, then started working on a vulnerability management program, and then became the forensics manager at the previous job that I had. So it's always been around computers. Every piece of it works together. I tinker. I belong to a makerspace today in Framingham. So it's always, I'm literally tinkering with stuff all day, learn new stuff. I'm currently trying to develop some skills in machine learning to be able to work through that. I think that's going to be a big crossover for the cyber as well. So that's my quick introduction.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you, panelists. We have, as everyone can see and hear, we've got a real great group here of real down in the at the hardware level all the way up to the policy and entrepreneurial level. So great pollination that we can talk about ethics to risk assessment, risk management, project management. I know Patty's a pro at project management as well. And then on the other side of the house, how that integrates into curriculum and workforce development. Peter, why don't we start with you on our questions here? One of the questions that we've been thinking about is, what would be the best route if I were thinking about transitioning from the STEM or STEAM field into cyber? And what would you recommend approaches that I would use? What type of degrees? What should I be looking to change, whether I am a 20-year-old or a 35-year-old or whatever age I may be? What would you recommend?
Well, age doesn't matter, Alan, so it doesn't really. Well, cybersecurity is not rocket science. It's not a brain surgery. You don't have to educate yourself and train yourself for years to become one. All that it takes is some level of commitment and effort to be able to get there. There are several areas in cybersecurity. I mean, there are technical areas which are forensics, penetration testing, and DevOps, architecture. But then there are other areas that are policy making, risk management and other stuff. So if your background is very technical, you come from an engineering background or some technical background for yourself, you can always train yourself in the technology area of cybersecurity. You can become a forensic expert, or you can become a policymaker if you are coming from an arts background or a law background. So my suggestion is just stay put in your area. There's enormous opportunity in cybersecurity. Everybody is now aware of it. There's unlimited job opportunities out there. So I would simply say that choose your field, whether it's policy making or governance or risk management, non-technical, or you are technical, you can go in technical areas. And of course, all the colleges and universities around here offers all kinds of courses.
Great. Would anyone else like to chime in and talk about maybe what are the types of degrees or certificates maybe that I should look at or others should look at to be able to forge into this field itself?
Sure, I'll jump in on that one. I think in terms of certificates or degrees, again, it depends on the position that you're looking for, right? If it's more of an entry level, a 2-year community college cybersecurity program certificate is fantastic. We actually just hired at WPI a security analyst who had done one of those 2-year programs, and he was able to jump right in and is a fantastic member of the team. I think if you're a working professional, we have a woman on our staff who's a security engineer and who's a network engineer and wants to go into security, right? So we recommended to her, she's got her bachelor's, go back and pick up a short certificate at a community college to get the basics. And then I think for me, the gold standard is the CISSP, but you have to be in the field for a little while to get that one. But if you get that one, I think you can get a job anywhere.
I can also add to Patty's comment. CISSP was going to be my comment. After years of working, not having an opportunity to take that, I got my CISSP last year. Just reading the books alone covers it. You can read through the book, see which sections you like. That gives you a very good direction of what you would want to do. I learned a lot of stuff through just reading the books and then eventually taking the exam.
That's great. Switching gears slightly, Ladrina, you and I talked about this when we last chatted. What experience what does cyber experience really look like? And, you know, outside of just the certificates or degrees, you know, what are employees really looking for me or an individual to have that experience? And before we even get to how do I gain that, but what experience am I really needed to have?
Yeah, great question. And I think we can look at this panel itself, and just in meeting all of the esteemed panelists, I could have told you one thing upon all of us first meeting, which is that all of us are pretty well guaranteed to have had different paths and different experience in getting into the field, which we've already talked about so far. So as far as experience, you know, I'll also reiterate, you might be somebody who is currently a working professional looking to change into cyber. And similar to what Patty mentioned, you might have opportunities within your own company, or maybe using skills you already have to transition into cybersecurity. So if you're somebody who's currently a marketing professional, can you go into a cyber company as a marketing professional and then maybe learn about what you want to specialize in more, for example? The same things can apply even if you're somebody who is getting out of school and new to the industry. Whatever you're already a pro in, even if it's something like, you know, you enjoy on the weekend with your friends doing role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons. Well, those skills, you know, once you learn about different expertises and different specialties within cybersecurity, can transfer over to something like tabletopping and planning incident response, which is a really, really hot field. So again, take what you're already great at, take what you have expertise in, whether professionally or personally. And I think there are a lot of different ways to spin that into your next cyber career.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Does anyone have additional items? I think Ladrina did a really good job there, but is there anything else that?
Well, if you're thinking about how employers can engage STEM backgrounds, I would tell you that internship is the greatest program available out there. I mean, companies do have limited budgets. You know, companies cannot hire several paid interns, but I think the universities and the colleges can get very creative. By, you know, a real-time example would be that we have partnered with Clark University. Alan was aware of that, with SBA, and we are able to bring in some interns into the program. Same thing for Assumption University, where we can bring in people with some credits. But eventually end up hiring some of those interns. So there's always an opportunity there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Thank you for that. Let's turn the table kind of back. Patty had pinged on a little bit something in 2-year degrees. Patty, how does higher education fit into this landscape in general for open jobs, you know, specifically in the cyberspace? And if I'm transitioning, whether I am already in a STEM field or I am, you know, graduating high school, what are the things or the attributes that I should be looking for in a program in selecting a field? Because Ladrina just pointed out, whether you're doing tabletop gaming and playing Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, that's applicable to tabletop exercises. Same thing here. What are those things that you would recommend, and how do they fit into the ecosystem?
Sure, that's a great question. So again, it's really, what are you looking to do, right? If you're looking more to go along the analyst role, you want to make sure you're in a program that is tailored to that. If you're looking to go more into, say, pen testing, you want to make sure you can go into a program where they're going to teach you the appropriate hacking skills. If you're looking for a 2-year versus a 4-year program, you really have to decide what it is what type of career path that you want, and then select one of those options. I think there's tons of programs out there these days, lots of flexibility. So it's really picking the program that is the right fit for the career path that you want to go into.
And I'd love to hear from the other pros on here as well, in terms of what are those attributes should I focus in on programming, like Peo said he kind of pivoted to, or should I focus in more on IT, or is it project management, or which one should I kind of think about? Should it be a smattering? I'd love to hear other folks.
I can jump in here.
Please.
So I think I subscribe to being a T-shaped person. And by that, I literally mean the letter T of the alphabet. And what that means is that I appreciate people who have a broad set of skills. And then as you progress further and further in your career, you can deepen those skills and really specialize in one area. I think that this is a great way to start because as I alluded to in my introduction, where I ended up specializing is an area that I didn't even know existed when I was in college, and frankly, could not have gotten a college degree for.
Great.
Well, again, Alan, if you want to chime in, again, it's about the people's personality. If you are a people's person and you wanted to manage projects, then you become going to project management, and then you manage cybersecurity and all projects. If you are very technical, you just don't want to talk to anybody else, you wanted to do your own thing, well, you have the technology that you can get on and really work on it. I mean, there is really a challenging focus on forensics and pen testing that certain people will get very much attracted to. So I would say if you are technically focused, I would say explore those areas.
So it sounds like it's learning what your propensities are and your learning skills is, I think everyone's kind of nodding. All right, great. Let's move on to a slightly different space. Saman, you and I talked, and you mentioned that you're working in a STEM, and I always again add the STEAM in there. Given your work experience in a grade 7 through 12, how should the K through 16 space, I include the collegiate space, or K through 14, 16, however you want to look at it, improve their downstream experience for the cyber workforce in terms of development, curriculum, pedagogy, and the nature that students can get involved and get excited about it?
Sure. I've been basically working through teaching from 2nd to 8th grade. And what I've seen is there's a deficiency in that process where they're fairly curriculum mapped. So they're very tied to the work. And with additional sports, it's even setting up a 4-hour seminar is very difficult for the kids. I specifically focused on 7th and 8th graders to get them ready for high school. And I find that a lot of kids coming out of high school do not have computer skills, very basic hardware, software, coding. So that's really important to work through. And the basis for fixing that is to, one, the educators probably have to have this upgrade their skill set. Like Patty said, some of their people are going back and getting certificates. It is difficult to find that the actual staff that has the computer skills to be able to teach that. So unfortunately, it has to be almost optional, not a required, but it should be eventually treated as a science where you learn all the sciences and you learn them and see which one you like, and cyber should be one of them. And I find so many kids coming out of 9 through 12 that don't have any experience, and they enter college and they don't have an opportunity to do that. I see that post high school, they do have great career paths. They can start and work through it. So it's that prep work between 9 and 12 that has to be worked on. And just teaching them very basic hardware basically building hardware and then teaching them some softer skills would be a great start. I think those will be used everywhere throughout the cyberspace.
Great, thanks. Now, I want to give a soapbox to everyone. If you had your druthers and were able to modify the downstream K through at least 8 system, what would be some of the things that you would think about? Because we've done lots of studies here at Clark and other places that have looked at that 7th and 8th grade as a pivotal point. What would be some of the things that you would integrate into the K through 8 curriculum or ecosystem again?
Alan, I'll jump in on that one, but not necessarily K through 8, but more the sort of 9 through 12. I think Massachusetts has a lot of wonderful vocational technical high schools, and those schools actually have internship programs for their students. And if the students could get an entry-level internships working in Security Operations Center, and I will say that I had my 12th grader who's at a Vogue school work in our SOC at WPI, and it was a fantastic experience, right? And it gets them very, very excited. If we could do more of that to get the high schoolers excited and expose them to the real world, get them, some experience working in base security like a SOC, I think that would generate a lot of interest.
I can build on Patty's suggestion and think about something that we could include even earlier in the curriculum, which is cybersecurity literacy, including looking at misinformation and disinformation. So when young people are first starting to get online, trying to understand who to trust, is it okay to share my password? Is it, should I think about, should I double check and understand what is being fed to me on social media? I think I would love to see those critical thinking skills, which can be applied throughout all of these cyber careers.
So a sort of logic class talking about, if this, then that, and kind of using the traditional, non-De Morgan's, but the traditional, Western logic of thinking. I like it. Peo, anything in your come up?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, a lot of times we focus on the tools that we use, which are mostly single-sided, I would say, one-sided, I would say. Like we always using Windows. We always use now Apple devices, we use Apple devices, but you got to get the kids interested in other operating systems too. I mean, it looks like kids come out of high school, think that there's only one operating system called Windows. And if you want to use some fun gadgets, then you got to use iPads. Not necessarily. There's Linux, which is the foundation for all the cybersecurity we are talking about. So I think there's some level of diversity in terms of the operating systems and the technologies out there would really help the kids open their mind up a little bit more. They can look around a little bit more and learn a little bit more.
Great, thanks.
And I can add. I'm sorry, I can add a little bit more. When I've done some of these teachings, they're literally 4 hours, maybe even 2 sessions of 4 hours for the whole grade. And even those, just to start that spark. And I've seen so many kids get so excited over just a very simple LED lighting up, programming a Raspberry Pi in Minecraft. So even a 4 to 8 hour 7th, 8th grade, and then add to that, it's a very small commitment for the schools to make. And if they could make that optional available, that would be a great start.
Great. I'm going to go off script slightly here. So what I'm hearing is this cognitive reverie that you're all talking about, inspiring students and giving them an opportunity to let the light bulb go off. It's all coming back to a center point of internships, but more importantly, mentoring. And so how does that mentoring fit into this ecosystem? So why don't you talk about how that would fit in? I know this is kind of something we really didn't get into before, but it fits into those internships. How do I get a mentor in the cyberspace before I even get an internship, or are they tied together? Are they juxtaposed?
Who was that sent to?
So I'm saying, should I look for a mentor or an internship that helps me get a mentor?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
We just at Unibank, we just started our internship last year, and I think the internship is a very key part. I've now become mentor of one of the interns, and as part of the makerspace, I literally get 2 to 3 questions a week from anybody that wants to ask through the makerspace forum to help them with projects. So it is important to get that process started, get that initiative started as an intern, and then the mentorship will come along with it. And it's probably people like us that love to teach, so we love to mentor as well.
Yeah. Great. Peo, how can employers such as yourself who have, who's an entrepreneur, how can you engage in these STEM backgrounds to fill a pipeline, fill a talent pool for cybersecurity roles? You've talked about specific areas that I can look at, but what are you looking for in terms of, an entry-level person? Is questions that are coming up that it's 3 to 5 years minimum for a lot of roles. What are you looking for in that individual? If I just say I'm a go-getter, is that enough, or what do I really need to have on my resume?
Well, I would say that the foundations of cybersecurity, you should have taken a basic level of courses, or someone who's self-taught, who knows stuff about, who can talk a cybersecurity talk. But a lot of times what happens is that a lot of companies don't have, there's several holes in cybersecurity, including the policies, including a lot of companies don't even have a working information security policy in place. So a lot of the companies can also, as I said, if there's more cooperation between the employers and the institutions, education institutions, doesn't matter if it's a 4-year degree in either WPI, Clark, or Quincy Government Community College, it doesn't really matter. If there's a good level of cooperation among the employers and the universities, there's a great opportunity for kids to participate in internship programs. As I said before, companies don't have unlimited budgets. They cannot hire, dozens and dozens of interns. But however, they can get creative. I mean, if they, as I said earlier, they can be towards the credits of the course, or it could be an outside partner like an SBA or MassTech or Mass TLC or any of those programs. And that really opens up doors, because I can tell you there are times that I've been a consultant in the past. I had gone to places and they started uncovering things. And then there is my 6 months contract that I can fill those gaps. So, but kids need to have that opportunity to get through the door to an employer and explore these opportunities. And that, I believe, comes through larger cooperation between the companies, businesses, and the education institutions.
Love to hear others.
Sure. As part of the fintech role that I had, because the demand is so high and there's so few candidates, I did give a lot of credit to any academia. And one of my success stories was, which I shared with you earlier, was somebody that worked at a dentist's office, decided that was not the career. They took a 2-year cybersecurity course, and he beat out all my NCIS employees in a capture the flag setup. So it literally took him 2 years. His career, he basically was getting 4.0 grades, A's across the board. He was a TA. I gave a lot of value to that, to be able to say he's that. His military background obviously helped, that he had that rigid structure, and he did a great job joining the team. So if they don't have the work background, I would give some credit to obviously the college. To even 2 years is sufficient to gain great experience in that and join as a starting person.
Great.
And if I could just add, relative to the mentoring, because I think the internships are really important as well, but relative to the mentoring, especially because we're all in this mass resignation right now, right, where there's people jumping and hopping jobs. If you can mentor your existing employees and move them from one position to another, and it's a better position and they get more out of it and they like it, it's a win-win for any organization. So we do a lot of that. If there's people that show interest in cyber, and maybe they're in the network world right now, or maybe in a different role, maybe they start in a low-level service desk role but want to move into more of a security role, we'll mentor them, tell them what training and education to get, and then work with them, answer questions, and then they become more valuable employees.
Ladrina, what are you looking for in those type of employees who are either coming into your team or, filling into that gap? And how does the mentoring work? You're working day in and day out on this. How would that kind of scale?
Yeah, good question. So I think that when I'm looking for people to bring into a team, or maybe I'm looking at a new mentee and trying to understand how much do they know about the field. One thing that I really like looking at, and this is a great benefit that we've had, especially in the past 2 years, is there are so many additional opportunities to do some self-education. So this might mean attending virtual conferences that are free. This might mean participating in, as was mentioned just earlier, Capture the Flags, free contests online where you can prove your security skills.
Yeah.
And, to a lot of the questions that are coming in, trying to get that first security role, coming out of whatever background you're in. I think those are things that I look at to help understand how much does somebody understand about the field? How much are they willing to keep learning? Because by the way, once you're in the field, a really important thing is to keep up that education and keep up with the field. And really, the biggest thing beyond a couple of those items you can put on your resume is to get out there and network. So I just really want to stress this is education is great. I teach for one of my jobs and love being able to have my students leave my class with additional certifications. But it's really, really growing your network and making connections, whether it is other people at your internship, whether it is with peers from a former class who've moved on to a company. Getting those interpersonal connections on top of education is a great thing to strive for.
Great. Thank you for that. You kind of hit on a lot of things that are on the mentoring space, and then going into the space of working in logic. I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into the technology side of that. Maybe Patty, you can talk about what you're doing at WPI, or the rest of the gang. You can kind of chime in. Can we talk about how a SOC is useful, what the setup at WPI might look like in other places, and what type of things should I be looking for whether training or reskilling in that
Sure.
space?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of years ago, when I first got to WPI, we actually didn't have a SOC. And one of our security engineers said, how about we create a SOC and we leverage student employees to do it? I said, great, let's do it. And so he designed a SOC, and we had 3 or 4 students, and amongst those students, that would give us almost 40 hours of coverage during the week. And we trained our students. We have tools. Of course, we have a SIM, and we have tools that use AI detection to alert us to anomalies on the network and things like that. And the students were the first line of defense, looking at the data coming in from our alert system and then raising it up to our security engineers for things that they thought were that level. It was a great experience. The students who work in the SOC have told me they really love it. Even during COVID, when school closed down, we had students working remotely in our SOC, and they were so appreciative and thankful because they learn great skills. And then these students, before they graduate, they have jobs because they've already been working in cyber for a year or 2 or 3 or 4, in our SOC, understanding, being mentored by our security engineers. So really, really great opportunity for students.
What about others in that space, whether it's a range or a SOC or similar?
I think SOC has, it is a 24/7 job, so it's probably easier to get into. If you're willing to work second, third shift, there's probably high demand to start in that process. So that's one of the, as part of the questions we'll go over, I would say the SOC itself is an easier entry level. It is very demanding and it's very dynamic. So SOC would be a place to start, and you can progress from there. You can get a year or 2 experience there and move forward from there.
Well, I could just chime in on the software that's available out there. A lot of times, if you're new to the area field, you just don't have access to those software. There are a lot of companies do offer trial softwares. You could explore them, but there's a magic word called open source. You could explore open source, and there are plenty of SOC software out there which might be primitive, but it gives you the fundamental ideas of what it stands for and what it's for. And I think you could just develop your skills based on those open source softwares available to you.
That's great. Thanks, everyone. There was a comment that someone put in the chat about soft skills, and this is obviously very important in any industry. How does that translate in the cybersecurity space specifically? What are the things that me as whether a career change, I'm an architect, or I am a painter, or whatever it may be that I'm looking to pivot, how do we increase those skills? Ladrina talked about, getting involved in going to mixers and things of that nature, which I think is super important. How do I work on those skills so that they are intersecting with cybersecurity and STEM? What are some suggestions that you may all have?
All right, I'll jump in on that one. I think the soft skills are critical, right? Because you have to communicate cyber far up the chain, get buy-in, get support, get funding. And I actually have someone who's a fantastic security engineer, so technical, so knowledgeable, and she'd like to move to a CISO role. And she does not have the communication skills to move up. So we're going to work with her and get her training on the soft skills, on the communication, making sure she can, present to executives things along those lines. So again, all part of, I think, once you get in the door, figure out your career path and work with your leadership to mentor you to get you those skills that you need, but absolutely critical.
Yeah, I would also second that. Just having the communication skills, because you're a decision maker, even at SOC level 1, level 2, you do have to work through it, know when to escalate, know when to follow rules. And it is very important to build those and be able to communicate that. At times, you will have to be put on the spot and report to management. So those are very important skills of, you may be in an incident, you have to make a decision, I need to go to management and take action. So you do need to have those soft skills very much.
If I could add one thing from my personal experience, which is I still include, maybe not on my resume, but on LinkedIn in my career experience. If you look back far enough, you'll see that when I was younger, I worked in a bicycle shop and I was helping customers get their bicycles repaired. And I mention this here because I think working in that shop is one of the best things that transferred over, besides my technical information. One of the best things that's transferred over into some of the work I do today, which is communicating between different parts of my team that might have been working different shifts, making sure that I was working with other members of my team to see tasks through to completion. So I just want to offer that as an example for anybody who is looking to make that move into a SOC as one kind of skill from a completely different career that you might be able to use as an example, or a way to develop your soft skills when we're talking about different industries.
Yeah, if I may jump in 1 second, I'm looking at the chat. There's some confusion maybe over soft skills and SOC itself. So soft skills, obviously, things that you're working on. SOC is Security Operations Center. So that's what we call eyes on glass. You're literally looking at the computer, working through the process. So that's the first part of the cybersecurity, is to actually look at all the events. There's an engineering part which collects the events, and you as a security operations analyst would be looking at those events. Level 1 looks at it, escalates to level 2. So security operations is what we're talking about as part of SOC, SOC.
Great, thank you. Moving back into the curriculum space and the importance of pedagogy, and I think Ladrina hit the nail on the head. The curriculum is one point, but the experience and then getting hands-on is the other side of the puzzle. Ladrina, how can STEM curriculum be supportive of that? What is needed in that cyberspace for STEM to intersect? We kind of tapped around the edges on those, but what aspects of cyber curriculum are applicable to those interested in STEM specifically?
So when we think about STEM or STEAM, so science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, and how that overlaps with cyber, if those were two circles, I think there's a great intersection of those two areas when we think about things like the scientific method. So we think about having a hypothesis, following up on it, and then seeing where that leads and going back and repeating. And if you're somebody who's already in the sciences and has a strong methodology there, I think that's one great thing to transfer over. I'm not sure what other overlaps we can talk about going back and forth if other folks want to chime in here.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead, Pia.
Well, I can think about criminology, obviously tied more close to forensics, if you're looking at an overlap. If you're looking at communication skills, obviously, you're looking at law degrees or some legal backing, you're writing policies and procedures. And in actuarial, you're looking at risk management. So there are always overlaps with STEM with cybersecurity, because cybersecurity is an overarching umbrella across the entire IT infrastructure. So, you can tap into any place you want to.
Saman, very quickly, in terms of delivery, what are some of the methodologies that, I as an individual is looking to get into the cyberspace? Should I be going on site? Should I just be reading a book like you mentioned? I can read a book and, learn it in 60 days. What are some of the best ways that you would all recommend for individuals who are starting out or changing fields?
Sure. I think that being in a group scenario, to being a part of either a class that you attend, I always benefit from hands-on and discussion groups, because you learn a lot through that process. So I would say that should be the core, is getting a 2-year degree, attending classes as part of that. When I said read the CISSP book, it's just basically a guideline. I read the whole thing. I learned that I knew about 70% of it through 30, 40 years of career. And then you learn a lot of new stuff and say, hey, this is the one I'm interested in. So I think they can be combined. I currently use online tools like LinkedIn Learning. I use connections to Safari books. I try to do as much education as possible. And obviously Google is your friend. So you can Google anything, learn anything same day. So that's what I usually do. If I don't know anything, I Google it and start working through it. It has to be a trusted place. Some certifications are not viewed as strongly as others, but anything that's related to cyberspace is very, very strong to put on your resume. And
sorry, go
go ahead.
No,
and anything you do here, put on your LinkedIn profile, because that's where most people look in first. Before starting the interview, they look at your LinkedIn profile. So make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date and current.
Yeah, what would you recommend in this space in terms of that delivery? Or, you have partnerships with your company, but is it Ladrina said basically you're a lifelong learner in any space, in my opinion, but is it an on-site thing, or should I just focus and try to do something that I can, manage virtually? Or is it a combination of both, in your opinion?
I think it's a combination of both. It's also, as I said earlier, it's about the personality. Listen, there are some people who are born with innate qualities of communication. I'm not one of them, but you can choose one that feels that's most related to you. If you're a problem solver, then you wanted to dig more into penetration testing or architecture. If you are a criminology background, not a criminal background, a criminology background, you look into forensics. So I personally think that it's your individual taste. Don't go with the crowd. Choose identify who you are and associate yourself with the talent that you want to be in.
Great. So we have time, I think, for one more kind of panelist question, and then we have some audience questions here, and we can go for some dialogue if that works for everyone. And I think the focus in on career changes, what are some of the things that I should be looking for? Is the primary thing, should I focus in on income? Is it workforce development for myself? Is it training? Is it flexibility? How would you prioritize, those 3 or 4 things that we all look for in terms of the pyramid? You can only pick 2, that pyramid, time, money, experience, and all that jazz. So what would you all recommend as an entry-level person who's looking to get involved?
Well, I'll take the question. So Alan, I would say we all work for a paycheck. There is no question about it. So, keep that aside. But there is a remarkable difference between a software engineer or a programmer or serving in a law enforcement or serving in military, right? We often don't say, thank you for your service to a software programmer. I never heard that in my life. But you could do that to a law enforcement official or people serving in the military. So I would say, who knows? There are areas in cybersecurity that you can really prevent a nuclear war in the future. You could be a part of a game. or you could just prevent a collapsing of a financial institution or a small CPA firm, or you could just be protecting the savings of your grandparents. Someone trying to steal the bank. So there are, if you are service minded, you can really and focused on technical or policy making. You could train yourself in a way that you can even participate or work for a law enforcement agency, FBI, CBI, NSA, DISA. There are n number of them out there, and you could find a career in the path, and you could also be service minded while you collect your paycheck. And I would say that it's not a stretch to think that way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's really about your personality and what career is going to be fulfilling for you. Because you're right, we're all going to collect a paycheck. Most of the jobs in the security field pay very well, but you got to do what you love. And so you can't take somebody with no programming experience and have them coding all day from a security perspective. But if they've got good communication skills, maybe they do the policy aspect or the project management aspect of security, because there's many different types of jobs. So find what you're passionate about, what you're good at, leverage your strengths, and look in that direction. And I also saw in the chat, there's a lot of questions like, how do I get in if I'm entry level? And sometimes maybe you get in, not in the security field, but start at the service desk, right? And once you're in at a company and you've got those skills, something is going to open up and then you can move over. So sometimes you have to take an indirect path in something else in IT, or take an analyst role. Maybe it's not in security, but you're an analyst, then you can move to the SOC later on and keep moving up the food chain.
Yeah, that's a good conversation, Saman. Sorry. One of the questions that connects into that, Saman, maybe you can add yours. Someone asked, it's looking for 3 to 5 years, like I mentioned before. And the question is, why is it so hard to get an entry-level position? Is it the verbiage that the HR department is representing? Is it that the jobs just are requiring that experience? What are things, Saman, that you would, tying in that last question of,
Sure.
picking X number of things?
Sure. I mean, some of it has to do with the automated process that you submit your resume and it goes through. So that's a big thing. That's where the networking comes in, having the connection to be able to get through the door, get the resume looked at. I think that's the first problem. Some of it has to do with the HR just puts the years in to make sure you're at the correct grade level. But at the fintech I worked for before, as SOC 1 had very little demand from the person that was coming in. Education counted, years of experience in other fields. When you interviewed, we looked for, again, good communication skills. And both the jobs that I had, security operations and forensics, were 24/7 jobs. You have to be prepared to do that. And if you are, that's a very important thing to state, that you are willing to do that, and that's part of the process. I think being a security operations level 1 should be fairly easy to find. It might not be in your region, so you may need to move to some other company that you like. If you work for Citi or somewhere, you may end up in Texas as opposed to Boston. So you have to be ready to relocate if that's part of it. Would be what I would look for. Just don't look for Mass or the surrounding states. It has to be looked at everywhere.
Others? Anyone else have any other input on that? If not, we can move on.
I can add one more thing. There was a couple comments in the chat about networking, and Lorinda mentioned this before as well. I think that's really, really critical, right? One of our recent hires in our security space, I knew through a connection to somebody else. And when we had an opening, it wasn't quite the right fit, but we changed the job because we knew the person would be a good fit. And it was through networking that he ended up getting the position here, even though he had the skills and he'd gone through and done the 2-year degree and things like that. So that's also really an important part of the process.
Great. So we've got a couple questions in here that I just want to percolate back up to the top. At Clark, we are going through our governance in front of that board as our cybersecurity space, and this question actually kind of works and folds into it. What do employers expect someone to do with an associate's degree versus a 4-year degree or just a certificate? I'll add that in as well. Can anyone, what job postings basically would I be able to apply for, get, and then what are the expectations, I guess is the question.
So where we are, an associate's degree would probably start as an analyst. And then a 4-year degree is going to be an engineer if they've got the engineering skills, and then beyond that, higher level.
Others?
Well, that's probably the norm in the industry. I mean, as far as I go, I mean, I would say your personal skills. I mean, I recently hired somebody who has spent 7 years in Linux right from high school, and that's what I'm looking for in the guy. I mean, he has an associate degree. I really don't care about his degree. I'm going to hire him, and he's going to be a great resource for me. So it's about developing your own skills. I mean, just don't go to the class and come back and finish your homework. Do something else. That would be, spend time with the new operating system, spend time with SOC software. When you go to an interview, promote your ideas. That's what your talents are. And I'm sure there are people out there who's looking for those special talents that you got outside of your curriculum or outside of your learning, outside of your certificates.
Great. Ladrina?
I think that a lot of roles will tell you what the difference is going to be between different degrees. And I'll give you one example I've frequently seen in public service roles are job requirements that say, we want somebody with a master's degree or a 4-year degree and 2 years experience in the field, or an associate's degree and 4 years experience. So just one example. And I think if you are, for example, working with a mentor to find your next role, coming to that person who's helping you or a recruiter with, here's what I'm looking at. Can you help me show my qualifications is going to be key.
Great.
Yeah, I would also say that the internship really helps. So money should not be the first motivator. So you should definitely get the job experience, even if it's an intern role. Once you see intern that they've done it, they were successful, that counts for a lot in addition to the degree you have. A certificate, it's probably depending on what it is, other than maybe a CISSP associate, which you can get without, I think you have 5 years to gain your work experience. Besides that, the certificates are a little tricky depending on which one you have and how trusted it is.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, panelists, for such a lively discussion and some wonderful things. And I do implore everyone who is on this and is viewing this after we have recorded it to please reach out to the Mass Cybersecurity Center, Stephanie and/or Max, about mentoring and about some of the service offerings that they have, the job listing boards. They do a really fantastic job with that. There's cyber range things that are coming up as part of the Mass Cyber Center that everyone should be looking to get involved with. And I do again thank all of our panelists for your time today and appreciate all of your efforts. We will see everyone another time.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye.